In this guide, I'm going to show you how to add some class back to your G37 with a properly fitting set of aftermarket wheels. It is an Infiniti after all. Researching wheels for this platform can be a little overwhelming because there are so damn many of them. You'll see wheel diameters from 17 to 20, widths up to 12, and offsets from plus 50 to ultra-hotboy specs like negative 30. Where do you even begin? Well, in this guide, we're going to cover a little bit of everything. OEM plus fitment, stance, even some built-on air suspension. You'll learn all the wheel and tire specs so you can order with confidence from the best damn wheel and tire retailer on the internet, threepiece.us. This fitment guide is all about the G37 coupes and sedans, 07 to 15 model years. Yes, it's similar to the G35 and 350Z, but we want to make 4 videos, not 1. Plus, we already covered the Z in another video. Got a 370? Check it out. It's linked below. So, starting off, basic fitment info, the stuff you need to know to buy the right wheels. 5x114 bolt pattern, M12x1.25 lug nut thread, 66.1 center bore, and 80 pound-feet of torque. This is the classic JDM fitment, 5x114, 12x125, 66.1 center bore. The world is your oyster when it comes to wheel options. We have literally hundreds of thousands on our website. Again, linked below. Now, Coupe vs Sedan fitment, especially considering we're lumping both into one fitment guide. The Coupe is 13 millimeters, or about half an inch wider in the front, and 25 millimeters, yes, 1 full inch in the rear. To compensate, the factory wheel specs are quite different, 19 by 8.5 43 and 945. To compensate, the factory wheel specs are in fact quite different. There are so many different wheel options on this car. They are all listed in our fitment guide. The sedan is a bit thinner, but both can take very aggressive aftermarket wheels, and both are plagued by very sunken OEM fitment. You might be wondering though, what if I put those slightly more aggressive coupe wheels on a sedan? Well, we've got you covered. Of course you can. Here's a good look at that fit. These are OEM 19-inch coupe sport wheels, no spacers. The general consensus is that the rear will be near flush, depending on the alignment specs you go with, and the front will still be a little sunk, but much better than the factory sedan wheels. If you really want flush fitment from OEM wheels, you'll need to space them out or just get 4 rears. A 15 mil front spacer can do the trick if you're happy with the rear fitment. Otherwise, a 5 to 10 mil spacer in the rear can make it very flush. That said, just buy aftermarket wheels if you're spending all that money. As I said, the coupe is 13 mils wider in the front and 25 mils wider in the rear. And as a rule of thumb, if you're a sedan owner and see a coupe you like, you can copy the fitment by adding 13 and 25 to the offset respectively. If you're a coupe owner and see a sedan you like, just subtract those numbers. It's very simple. Now, recommended specs for aftermarket wheels. You didn't come here to learn about stock wheels, did you? Here's a quick look at the preferred sizes for aftermarket wheels, but there's such a wide range to fit that it's not a one-size-fits-all formula. 19 is the most popular diameter, however, 18 to 20 will work great on this platform. As far as width, 9 to 10 is a good range for a daily driver or weekend warrior build. However, these cars can go very wide, like super wide, especially the coupes. You're going to see them running a staggered setup, with rears as wide as 12 on factory fender arches. Offset will vary depending on which chassis you have and what type of look you're going for. For flush fitment on a sedan, aim for something in the 30 to 45 offset range, with a higher offset rear if you choose a staggered setup. The wider rear fenders on the coupe are an absolute blessing for staggered wheels, most coupes running 20 to 35 offset in the front and 25 to 40 in the rear. Now, when it comes to clearing the Akebono brakes that the sport model of the coupe comes with, the fronts are big. They're actually bigger than most supercar brakes, interestingly enough. Whether you have these or you put Akebonos on your sedan, you're probably aware of caliper clearance issues. Nothing clears these, and there's nothing worse than trying to mount some new wheels just to have them hit the caliper. The fronts cause most of the issues. The rears are pretty forgiving. Fun fact, 1.9 caliper protrusion on the front, and an R8 is actually less than that. To have adequate caliper to barrel clearance, you'll need at least 18-inch wheels. However, not all 18s fit, and caliper to spoke or caliper to face is yet another concern. Sure, a spacer solves this, but who wants to add spacers when they carefully selected the perfect width and offset from our website? Before ordering, there are some resources to reduce your anxiety. I'm going to give you a quick list of popular wheels that either pass or fail. This by no means includes everything, and if the wheels you're eyeing don't appear on this list, you should definitely contact us to see if they will work. So what about X models? Well, turns out this term's not only used in Tinder profiles. Nissan and Infiniti dubbed the all-wheel drive version the G37X or G37XS. Can you use a staggered setup? Sure, as long as the rolling diameter is within a 2% differential front to rear. The G37XS uses a staggered setup from the factory. In other words, make sure the overall diameter is almost identical and you're good to go. It's all in the tire sizing. Now let's get into some fitment, starting with the most popular 19-inch. If your car has Akebonos, you will not need to worry about caliper to barrel clearance. Getting into the fitment facts on this specific car. This one's on TSW Nürburgrings 19x9+32, Continental Pure Contact 245/40/19, and the same setup out back. This is a square setup on an all-wheel drive G37 with stock suspension. No mods needed, no rubbing, no scrubbing, no drama, no bullshit. This 09 G37X sedan is sitting on TSW Nürburgring wheels. You do not have to run a square configuration on an all-wheel drive car, but heck, it makes things easier, and having everything perfectly symmetrical makes it absolutely foolproof. As we'll see in this guide, square setups are more common on sedans, given they don't have those massive wide rear fenders. With these specs, 19x9+32, the outer edge of the rim is almost perfectly flush with the fenders. This is with stock suspension. A quick note about lowering. If the same car was lowered, it might be slightly tucked due to the natural camber that is gained on these cars when they're lowered, but nothing that can't be corrected with alignment or suspension components. Now the next car we're going to be taking a look at here. This one is sitting on Work in Motion D9R 19x9.5+30, wrapped up in Sumitomo HTR Z5 255/40/19 and 1910.5+30 275/35/19 of the same tire. It's lowered on Swift lowering springs with -0.8 degrees of front camber and -2 at back, no rubbing. The D9Rs do clear Akebonos in these specs without spacers, and this is a sport coupe on 19s. This one's a staggered setup with a 9.5 in the front, 10.5 at back, and even with the 10.5 in the back, there's no issues with rubbing or scrubbing. The offsets are going to be more aggressive as well, +30 in the front and the rear. And if you wanted similar fitment for your sedan, you could increase these a bit, say +40 in the front and 45 in the rear. Remember, add 13 in the front and 25 in the back. This car is going to have tons of grip in the rear given those big tires, and they're matched up perfectly to those wheels. Now, we're taking a look at another set of work wheels. ZR10s, 19x10.5+23, with Continental Pro Contact 245/40/19, and 10.5+23 with the same tire again. This one is on Tien coilover suspension, and these ZR10s also clear the Akebono brakes with no spacers. There is slight rubbing even with the fenders rolled given that big sizing. Just because they are a bit thin does not mean they can't party. This sedan is running work wheels, spec'd at 19x10.5+23 all around. This shows just how wide you can go with the platform, and this is well beyond flush fitment and entering into stance territory. Making it fit did require stretched tires, camber, roll fenders, and some other stance trickery. There is a slight amount of poke, but it looks good even with the stretched tires. As you can probably tell, this car is built for form rather than function, not to say it's all show and no go, but the stretched tires and camber indicate it's built for weekend car meets instead of hardcore track driving, which is fine if you're into that. The car has slight rubbing when cruising on the street, and that's only going to be amplified if it were used on track for obvious reasons. Alright, so taking a look at another one here. This one is much more aggressive on weds. Kranz Ratzingers 19x10.5+19, effective offset +9, Continental DWS 206, 235/40/19, and 10.5+9 out back as well, with 235/45 Continental Pro contacts. Air suspension on this one is supplied by Airlift Performance, and the fenders are rolled and slightly pulled. There's no rubbing when aired up. Again, do not drive your bagged car aired out. If you are looking to build a show-stopping G, you could try to replicate the look of this 08 G Coupe on bags, but be warned, this type of fitment takes some serious dedication and work. First, this car is on an air suspension kit from Airlift Performance. We can see a lot of negative camber here, and to dial in the suspension, you're going to need camber arms, tow arms, traction arms, heck, all the arms. In addition, the fenders did need to be rolled and pulled to give space for the big-ass Weds Kranz wheels. With the air suspension, this car has no rubbing or scrubbing issues when it's aired up, which is one of the huge bonuses of air suspension. A lot of people in the States do sleep on Weds wheels, but in Japan, they're some of the most popular. We did a whole feature on the brand, both long form and short form, and you can learn about both in the description down below on an OG JDM brand that might be flying under your radar. Now, after 19s, 18s, and 20s are about equal in terms of popularity on these cars. Both do look good, however the motivations to pick one or the other could be completely different. Let's take a look at how 18s look. These are some Volt TE37 Sagas 18.5+38, Firestone Indy 500s 245/45/18, and the same setup out back. This is on factory sport suspension, no rubbing, Akebono's clear TE37s without spacers. If you're looking for the absolute lightest of the light, 18 by 8.5 TE37s are about as light as you can get. At a 38 offset, they're more aggressive than stock, but not by too much. The wheels still sit pretty sunken into the fenders, and with 8.5-inch wide wheels, we would like to see a lower offset, maybe around a plus 30 or even a plus 22. A setup like this is a very conservative daily driver setup, but as we can see, these 18-inch TEs do clear the Akebono brakes with no spacers. If you're looking for something timeless and super light, performance-oriented, TE37 wheels are the way, and you can get them from our website down below. Next up, we're looking at some odd Hans, 18 9.5 plus 22, 225 40 18, and the same out back. This one is the DS06 model. This one is again bagged on airlift performance with rolled fenders and no rubbing when it's aired up. The wheels do clear Akebonos with no spacers, which is great for a budget-friendly wheel. You could choose 18s if you also wanted to dump your ride on its nuts, and this is what you see on this 2010 Coupe on bags from Airlift Performance. Compared with 19s or 20s, 18s will be level with the fender when aired out. If you want to run bags and don't like the tucked look, 18s might be the best choice, as it will allow you to lay frame and be the absolute lowest you can be. You will need all the other fixings to go with the air kit, including camber arms, rolled fenders, etc., and air suspension. Well, to be frank with you, it ain't cheap. However, these wheel specs could be used on any other type of suspension and at any ride height. This one just happens to look great on air. Finally, we're going to wrap things up with some dubs on the G, and if you come from older JDM stuff like S chassis, AE Corollas, etc., 20s might sound like blasphemy to you. The thing is, they actually fit the G and Z34 platforms pretty darn well. This one's on Wed's Crans Glosses, 20 by 9.5 plus 40 with Falcon FK510s 225/30/20, and the same setup out back. Another square setup, which is interesting to see on these cars. This car is sitting static on coilovers. And if you really like that tucked VIP style look, 20s are a good option. Sure, it's possible to tuck 19s, but this 08 Sport Coupe is doing it static. It's on coilovers. We saw cars that were slammed on bags, but this mad lad is slammed 24/7. The wheel specs are pretty modest, which makes them tuck nicely in the fender rather than having fender to lip fitment. Ultimately, it's personal preference. You can find this car and hundreds of other Gs in our vehicle gallery, which can help you dial in the perfect fitment. Check out more photos and details, such as this car supposedly having zero rubbing or scrubbing issues. We're gonna call BS on that one, be honest when you upload, unless you have 100K spring rates. Unless this car will almost always have rubbing with static fitment. So next car in 20s we're checking out is on ESR RF11 20 by 9 plus 22 Toyo Proxies 245/35s and ESR RF11s 20 by 10.5 plus 40 with Toyo Proxies 275/30/20. Lowered on eye block lowering springs, rolled rear fenders, no rubbing. This is a more conservative approach when it comes to running 20s. His 2012 sedan is on Eibach lowering springs instead of airbags. His wheel specs are 20 by 9 plus 22 in the front and 20 by 10.5 plus 40 in the rear. This is perfectly flush fitment on a sedan and is running a meaty 275/30 rear tire, which is a bit wider than we've seen previously. They did need to roll the fenders to make these fit. These ESRs do clear Akebonos with 2 to 3 millimeters to spare. And if you're looking for a set of 20s, these run about $360 a wheel, which is not that bad considering the large size. ESR is one of our favorite brands, and they definitely make some great products these days. Pulling it all back together, well, the G Coupe fitment's not as difficult or overwhelming as it may seem. The important takeaway from this article is to base your wheel specs on the correct chassis. If you have a sedan, don't buy coupe wheels, and if you have a coupe, don't buy sedan wheels. They're not a one-to-one fit between each other. Remember that 13 to 25 mil difference front and rear respectively. Generally, these cars can and do handle wide wheels and tires, and we saw everything from 8.5 wide to 10.5 wide in front. As long as you get something between 18 to 20 and don't put a negative offset where there should be a positive, you're going to be good to go with fitment on your G. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know what vehicle we should do in the next video down in the comments. Please consider hitting the subscribe button, and if you're looking for wheels and tires, you know where to get them. threepiece.us, baby. I'll see you in the next one.